Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a single weapons transfer that could literally flip the script on decades of naval strategy and maybe even signal a whole new era of power on the high seas.
So let's just jump right in with the big question that's keeping military strategists up at night. Is the era of U.S. naval dominance actually over? For decades, the entire global security system has been built on one single core assumption. And that assumption was this: that the U.S. Navy could go anywhere it wanted, anytime it wanted, without facing a real credible threat. But now, that fundamental idea is being seriously challenged by reports of an advanced missile transfer that could change absolutely everything.
Okay, let's break this down. We're going to start by looking at how just one weapon system, in one very specific, very critical waterway, could have these massive global consequences. And the stage for all this is one of the world's most vital maritime choke points.
We're talking, of course, about the Red Sea. Now, this isn't just any body of water. It's a critical artery for the entire global economy. Nearly 12% of all international trade flows right through here, and that includes the energy supplies that are essential for both Europe and Asia.
Now, at the very heart of this whole situation is a weapon called the P-800 Onyx, and I want to be clear, this is no ordinary missile. It is a highly advanced, supersonic anti-ship system that was designed for one very specific job.
And that job is to defeat the best naval defenses on the planet. This thing travels at roughly Mach 2.5. It was engineered from the ground up to challenge incredibly sophisticated systems like the U.S. Navy's own Aegis combat system.
So what happens when you put a weapon with that kind of capability into the hands of Houthi forces right at a key choke point? Well, the implications are immediate and they're far-reaching. It essentially transforms the Red Sea from an area of U.S. dominance into a contested zone. Suddenly, it becomes way riskier and way more expensive for anyone, military or commercial, to operate there.
But that begs the question, right? Why on earth would Russia even think about making a move like this? Well, to get that, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger geopolitical chessboard. And that story really starts with the conflict in Ukraine.
See, from Moscow's point of view, this is all about a reciprocal action, a kind of strategic tit-for-tat. For more than 2 years, the West has been sending Ukraine advanced weapons specifically to weaken Russia's military. So this move can be seen as an asymmetric response, hitting back in a region that is vital to Western interests.
This is classic geopolitical signaling. It's what big powers do when a direct fight is just too dangerous. They respond indirectly. It's a very clear strategic message that says, hey, your actions in one part of the world will have consequences somewhere else entirely.
Now, to really grasp the symbolic power of what's happening, we actually need to look back in the history books for a minute, because some analysts are seeing some pretty startling parallels to another key moment in history.
And that parallel is the 1956 Suez Crisis. That event basically exposed the decline of the British Empire as a global superpower. And the fear today is that a successful missile strike on a U.S. warship could have a very similar, very powerful symbolic impact.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high. The credibility of America's security guarantees, its alliances, its economic influence, all of it depends on the perception that its Navy can control the seas. Any event that shatters that perception could send shockwaves around the globe.
You could almost think of this as a kind of Monroe Doctrine in reverse. For more than 100 years, that U.S. policy was all about keeping rival powers out of America's backyard, while this move by Russia could be their way of sending a message that global influence isn't a one-way street anymore.
So, how does this one event fit into the much bigger picture of how our world is being reshaped? Well, this isn't just about one missile system. It's really about a whole new strategic reality that's starting to take form.
One of the biggest under-the-radar trends is the rise of what you might call the sanctioned bloc. It's almost an unintended consequence. By isolating multiple nations, Western policy has kind of pushed them to work together to build their own alternative networks for trade, for finance, and for military cooperation. And that makes it a lot harder to control who gets what technology.
In this potential missile deployment, it is a textbook example of a military strategy called sea denial. And honestly, it is a total game changer. Why? Because you don't need a huge, expensive Navy to do it. You just need the right tech in the right place to deny access to a much, much stronger power.
This also really gets to the heart of a fundamental shift in warfare itself. For decades, military power was measured by how many aircraft carriers you had.
But today, smaller, cheaper, more mobile systems can pose a credible threat to those billion-dollar assets. The whole cost-exchange ratio is shifting, and it's shifting dramatically in favor of the attacker.
The point is, this isn't some isolated incident. It's a symptom of a new reality, one that's defined by indirect competition between great powers, the rise of influential regional players, and the spread of advanced weapons. It seems pretty clear that the era where one single nation could dictate global outcomes is fading.
But here's the key thing to remember. This isn't about the world falling into chaos. It's more like the world is reorganizing itself into multiple centers of influence, where lots of different players are capable of shaping events, both in their own regions and sometimes far beyond.
And all of that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. In this new era of contested seas, contested economies, and contested narratives, what does it even mean to be a superpower anymore? Because the answer to that question is what's going to define the geopolitical order for years to come.